Good evening and a very warm welcome. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this event and a very, very practical, very relevant topic. So this evening event will be in English, but we are also happy to offer Spanish translation. So we'll just have a very short language announcement. So I'm going to invite Enrique to make a short announcement for the Spanish group. Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes. Para los que están en un ordenador y desean la traducción al español, tienen que ir a los iconos de control y darle a interpretación. Es un símbolo de un globo. No se ve ahora porque aún no está activada la traducción, así que todo esto se podrá hacer cuando se termine de dar las instrucciones. Entonces, se le da al globo y ahí se le da a interpretación y luego español. Y hay la opción de silenciar el audio original para solo escuchar la traducción. Y luego en lo que son los móviles, también en los iconos de control, ir a los 3 puntos y luego interpretación de idiomas, hacer clic en español y al final darle a listo, que está en la esquina superior derecha. Pues eso es todo. That's it.
Thank you very much, Enrique. Wonderful. So you just need to unmute. Then it will work well. Excellent. So this subject is so helpful for all of us at this time. To be alone doesn't mean being lonely. And for this event, I'd like to just briefly introduce to you Ella, who will be technical support on the chat. Maybe you want to come and say hello to everyone and just come into sound so we can see you. So Ella is experienced meditator from Finland, so she'll be helping with the chat as well. So thank you. And I would like to also say we're going to be joined by 3 special guests, also experienced meditators. We have a writer, we have a former dancer, and a doctor with us. We'll explain more as we go through. So we invite you to share your comments in the chat and also on Facebook Live. Do feel free to put in your comments, questions, and that will help a lot. Checking the volume. Yes, if you have problems with your volume, please connect with Ella. So I'm going to introduce on this subject, first of all, Jim Ryan, and he's going to approach this subject, and his background is in teaching and management, practicing meditation for many years, background in Christian mysticism, human development, and an author. So it'd be nice to hear from you, Jim, for around 15 minutes, how being alone doesn't have to mean being lonely. And maybe your thoughts on this quote: the time you feel lonely is the time you most need to be by yourself. That was author and artist Douglas Coupland. So first, welcome to Jim. Hi, we can see you.
Hi everybody. Nice to be connected and online, showing we're not lonely, we're all connected. So shall I start, Sarah?
Yes, thank you. It would be very nice just to kind of give us your feeling on this subject. And as you say, we can be not alone because we're, in one sense, we're here with technology, but is it enough? And are there any benefits to this situation? Maybe there are some silver linings. It'd be nice to hear your experience and what you'd like to share with us.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay. I've been thinking, it's a very interesting topic. I was thinking the concept of being alone or loneliness has today connotations of being unloved, uncared for, not regarded, brings suggestions of being a failure, something wrong with you. But it's quite interesting if we look at nature, a tree or a flower, whether they were in groups or standing individually, we wouldn't think of them as anything less. They would have the same beauty, fragrance, and attractiveness, have the same effect on us. Yet, isn't it true, isn't it? In today's world, this being alone is seen as something to be avoided. I believe this term, alone or loneliness, is an artificial mindset created by a world that needs and feeds on this particular illusion. I think over time, since losing our spiritual self-awareness, we've been, I think, generally thrown into the arms of materialism and consumerism, which decree the essential need for possessiveness and accumulation. These religions of the body state that others and the need for relationships with others are essential to satisfy and validate our existence. And together with this, we need things, material things, to embed and hold this stance of dependency and attachment. So the major mantra and anthem of our time is never, ever be alone. Because to be always with others, always keep connection. Keep with you the furniture that goes with this relationship. For without these things, relationships just won't happen. They'll fail. So as a result of this, we're immediately wedded and affected by fear. The great fear of not having, of separation, isolation, of being alone. And without, of course, with it, all the social ramifications that go with that. So as to ensure that this does not occur, we are drawn into the great parade and show and form, the wearing of artificial masks, labels, and the adornment of false personalities, so that we can conform to the ethos of this particular illusion. The need, so it's creating the need and the ethos to attract, to appease, to comply, and to impress. So I think what happens is generally, it'd be interesting to hear what people think, but I was thinking that we seem to be always trying to be seen not to be alone, to be constantly doing, being busy, to nod, agree, to be the center of a happy, wonderful world. And if not, we're made to feel a failure. We're made to feel a social pariah. We're missing out. Life's over, doesn't it? This tends to be the kind of unwritten line behind everything that we kind of experience. And I think yet behind all this social, all this smiling well-being that we see around us and we see within ourselves, there is, I think, an emptiness, a dissatisfaction, a feeling that there's much more to life. Yet because of programming and social pressures, we all comply, fearful of rejection and non-acceptance. And so we repress, suppress, and as a result, naturally, an inner anger grows with this dissatisfaction. And so we blame and shout, or maybe we just recede into the shadow worlds of depression and hopelessness. Happy times, eh? A happy world. So what do we do? So what can we do? And I think spirituality really provides us a very powerful way to deal with these things. It reminds us that in the past, we coped and dealt with difficulties through maybe what we did, we diverted our attention by escaping, by taking time out, holidays, fantasies, and so on and so forth, to move away from the effects that we'll be going through. But spirituality says, more kind of cogently, yeah, we now can fully, I think, and consciously disengage from the things around us, from all the different problems and issues, and be centered in a space of clarity and mental control by thinking of ourselves and our lives in a different way. So spirituality is really indicating it's just by changing our thinking, by changing our attitude, by seeing our life as part of a great play and seeing ourselves as part of this great drama of life. And who we're playing and what we're doing are just parts of the great scenes of this great game. As we saw in the example of nature, you never say that, or you never say or see that an actor in a play is lonely or alone, do you? But of course, he's connected to others, to all the other scenes and interactions of the past and the things that are to come, of course. So by thinking in this way as being part of a great universal drama, we move away, I think, and I believe, from the isolation of the individual self to a feeling of being part of a greater harmony. And we move into the unlimited, in anticipation of a new and exciting experiences, all awaiting to reveal themselves, we hope. And as a result of all this, we start, I believe, to feel more centered, empowered, connected. And so we begin to change our old restrictive patterns of belief, attitude, and thinking. And so allowing our natural spiritual nature to surface, because it's been suppressed by all this wrong thinking, by all these fears, and so on and so forth. And we gradually no longer then become dependent on the illusions, propaganda, and control of the ephemeral worlds. And so with this connection with our truth, what happens, I think, is something incredible, something marvelous. We discover the person we've been searching for. We've all been searching for somebody? We have. We've all been searching for this particular person. This is the solution to our loneliness, this person. We rediscover our life companion, without whom we've often felt alone and unsupported. We find and rediscover ourselves, the solution to our loneliness. I'll stop there, Sarah.
That was very essential, Jim. We still have a few more minutes. It would be nice to hear from you a little bit more, maybe on some of this expectations, perhaps, because it could be social media, or is there a way that you found, how do you sidestep out of this kind of pressure and this aspect you mentioned, to want to appease, attract, impress? What's been working for you?
Yeah, I think this seems to be the main, the prevailing atmosphere of our world, isn't it? This aspect of show and form and becoming part of the expectations that society creates for us. For myself personally, I think it's through trial and error. I don't think it's an easy thing that we read in spiritual books and literature and teachings that self-realization immediately takes you into this kind of this alternative, wonderful world. But it doesn't. But what it does, it gives us an alternative space for us to move into, to think about things and to weigh up and look at things from a different perspective. And for me personally, it's been really about trial and error. It's about seeing what the world is saying and offering, and then weighing up what spirituality is saying, that which is the reality, and just experiencing this, taking it into your own world, taking it into your own life, and seeing the effect and seeing. And after a while, when you feel the power and the stability and the deep experience that the connection with our natural self is, the outside world, the offerings and all the kind of facades and all the things that it offers fade away. They're ephemeral. They just they're empty. But it's like you have to go through it. I don't think it's about, because what can happen in spirituality, we can do the same things. We can suppress the outside world in the sense of embracing the spirituality. And then what happens is, because we haven't reconciled the world outside, it starts to knock on our door. We start to look over the fence. And of course, it pulls us back into its wake. And we start then to kind of get lost and confused. But I think we have to kind of weigh up things, compare things, contrast, and see things from a very detached point of view. And I think the concept that I was putting forward is the idea of seeing life as a drama really gives you this opportunity to step back and to see things with a clarity and a depth, and not to then to compare and contrast, but just to be the observer. And we move into the state of appreciation and acceptance. And so there's no fighting, there's no kind of battling, but it's just allowing things to be as they are, but at the same time to weigh up, to see what's really happening within myself and within the world around us.
Yeah, thank you. It's really helpful to have a means to take a step back, so we don't have to buy into what we are sort of fed in a way, in terms of expectations from society, but also ourselves, and have that space to contemplate the options that we truly have with our mind. So,
Because I think in a way, spirituality sometimes can leave souls bereft. It can say, step into your inner world, let go into this beautiful, subtle world of being and existence. But there's no stability, there's no platform, there's nowhere for the individual to place themselves and to kind of work with, because it's too ephemeral, it's too subtle. Because things are only formulating. And I think this idea of experiencing yourself as part of a kind of progressive drama, it gives you the ability to not to be sucked under the kind of the maelstrom that's going on around you, but just to see it as part of what's happening, but not be affected, and not then to be caught up with all the comparatives and all the rejectional mindsets that we have when we meet our friends, individuals, and the world, which wants to create physical conflict. The world around us wants to create this conflict so it can offer remedies. It can offer ways forward into further confusion. But that's part of the game. But seeing it as a drama, we then let go, but at the same time travel with it. And we develop a kind of progressive awareness that helps us to be positive and helps us to embrace and accept and give good wishes and have a deep understanding for everybody around us.
thank you very much for this introduction, and there may be some questions from the group that we can ask you later in the panel. So that's really giving us like these different playful options available. So very nice. And next I'm going to invite our speaker, who's now currently in Rome. She was born in England in 41, so you can get the calculator out, look at the age. She has had a very interesting past, was working for the Olympic ski team for Great Britain back in the early 60s, and was a dancer in the 80s, and some brief work with dolphins at some point, but has been a meditator more focused on that since the mid-80s, and set up the center in Rome, and has some very beautiful insights on the subject. So very warm welcome to Wendy. Wendy Farrington, be nice to hear from you. I'm just going to get you set up here. And you just need to click the video. There we are.
There we are. So, good evening. This whole thing about solitude, it had never really hit me that I had ever experienced solitude. And I thought that maybe a lot depends on what your life has brought to you up till now. And although, as you were mentioning, I mean, I had a pretty active life, to say the least, but I was an only child. And of course, I mean, if you have many siblings, you probably will be less, challenged by loneliness, possibly as a child. We, on top of that, were living in a foreign country, and we moved a lot. And so I had a lot of difficulty or an impossibility in creating sort of little friends, etc. And I learnt, I should say, without particularly desiring to, but I learnt what it meant to be alone, but not feel lonely, actually. And I realized actually quite young that a lot depended on what I did within myself. And I learned to play with me. And I had actually at the time, as a small child, I created, and this is, I think, quite common with children, I created an invisible play friend. And we would play together. And coming to think of it, I never really worked out a name. I believe it was a her, not a he. We played cards together. We did all kinds of things together in my playing as a small child. And it taught me to fill a sort of an inner emptiness that I might have felt. There were people around me. I was not alone in the house, of course, obviously being small, I wasn't, but I clearly had to fill my space, my time, my thoughts, my feelings by myself. I had to work it out. And I remember having some quite powerful experiences at that time as a small child, playing Snap or something. We were playing cards with this invisible friend of mine. And what was really surprising was that I could actually, if I did something incorrect or I tried to do something wrong, I could feel her pain. Now, of course, you're playing with yourself, and it's another way of looking at yourself. I didn't know what it was at the time. But I suddenly realized that I couldn't, do something that she didn't know. And this brought me an awareness, in a certain sense, already as I was a child, as small. And of course, I remained an only child. And going to school, I was sent to school. I'm telling you this from my own experience, actually, and I mean, never thought about it. I was sent to a convent, and the convent was an Ursuline convent. It was very strict. And we remained for many hours during the day in silence, even though we were quite small. And to me, this was not a problem because I'd been used to that sort of external silence, which didn't mean to say that inside there is nothing there. I think the inner world, as Jim was saying, the inner world has to be created. It's sort of like a new home that you have to decorate. You have to fill it with what you enjoy. You have to fill it with your experiences, with your realizations. You are actually creating almost like a library for yourself, things that you can go back to, things that you can look at deep down to see if what you did was accurate or not, so that you can actually do better next time. You realize things, I think, when things go wrong. Otherwise, you possibly wouldn't really realize. And when things go wrong, it's good to go into that inner world and take a look at it and say to yourself, could I have done better? Why did this happen? I think a very powerful inner world is very useful. It's a very useful thing. You need to have that to, there are many, many times in life when it's necessary to have a possibility to resource yourself, to overcome certain difficulties, like if you have an operation and you remain for a certain time in hospital or whatever. It's a wonderful thing to combat loneliness, because once you've developed this inner world, you never feel lonely. You've taught yourself to fill that space that could feel lonely with your own ideas. One of the things that I've actually experienced in my silence or in my inner work is the company of what I call beauty. You need things that are going to lift your spirits, something that makes you feel happier, more contented, lighter. And whatever it is that is beauty for you will probably do it. Now, I personally like music, and we are living in an era that is very lucky in many ways, because we've got internet, we've got all kinds of opportunities, we've got YouTube. I mean, I love music, so I will listen to music, and I will listen to the music that I like. And I find that this will enormously fill, it's just a search for beauty. Anything that I perceive as beauty, I find to be very light. It makes me feel very happy, very light. And it gets me out of, because you can have in your inner world, you can have some quite heavy duty thoughts at times. But this will get you out of it. You need to know how to really, you need to know you. And in this solitude, you will learn to know you. And I think, you're living with yourself all your life. You can divorce husbands, you can, grow up and leave home, you can, you can cancel your friends, you can unfriend them and all this kind of thing. But you can't unfriend yourself. You can't, you're there. And I think that as long as you sort of can go back to appreciate the moments in your life where you really felt you did well. Maybe you didn't realize it. Maybe you just went on an instinct. Maybe you just at the time felt like doing a certain thing in a certain way. And then it turned out very well. Or maybe it was a more constructive idea where you really did work on it. But go back to those moments where you felt you did the right thing, where you changed things and things became good because of what you did. And you will find this very, very comforting at a moment which is difficult. It's not good to remain there are things you can do within yourself. As I said, the search for beauty. Beauty for you could be a sunset, for example. It all depends on the way you conceive beauty. Some people will see beauty in looking at animals. I did. I worked with animals. Some people see beauty in children or in nature, just looking at nature. And that will make you feel very light. You will never feel lonely, because nature will actually respond to you. I'm not saying it talks to you, though I quite happily talk to my plants. And that's because it's the only way I know how to communicate. But that said, when you start using silence, I mean, silence is not part of the subject this evening. But on the other hand, silence, when you're not chatting, of course, you're not going to go into your inner world if you're sitting in a pub with friends. So but there needs to be there's a time for everything. That's what I feel. There's really a time for everything. And when you do go into that solitude, it will be through the door of silence. Now, silence is not a cut-off. It's not a refusal to communicate. Most of our communication, is non-verbal. Just because you're sitting with someone in your living room, for example, doesn't mean to say that there isn't a very gentle communication that comes and goes. And I had this experience with my father, who used to, after his military career, he took up journalism and he wrote. And I used to at times go into the drawing room where he was working. He would never talk, but he'd look up from his work and he'd smile and say nothing, and then he'd go back, and I never felt that I had interrupted him because I did not talk to him. And these are things you learn through experience. I mean, we have done, during our activities for the Brahma Kumaris, we've done many silence weeks where people remain for a whole week in silence. Now, they are meditating, they are reflecting on their own behavior, they're reflecting on their happiness, on what they could do to make themselves more happy and other people around them more happy. And you start with silence, and they feel that they're not going to communicate, and it's wrong. You could perfectly well sit at a table and eat and not speak, and there will be a subtle communication which is not invasive in any way. It doesn't invade your thought patterns, which I think is just the presence can radiate. You learn that your presence will radiate goodwill, it will radiate joy, it might radiate love. And this is a very nice form of communication. You don't have to just jump in there and say something. It's not really necessary. And we don't trust it. It's because we don't trust it because we don't know. We're not used to the idea of being in solitude. But the moment you start really developing your solitude, it will fill up and it will become radiant, actually. I remember those years when I was at the convent. I was put at a convent school. And we were in silence a lot, and the nuns, you could hear the rosaries around their waists would jingle. That's about the only sound you heard, because we were not allowed to talk. We were only allowed to talk during recreation, during recess. It was the only time. We ate in silence. I mean, possibly all of this, I mean, maybe I had a strange upbringing that permitted me to, well, it was do or die, because I was an only child, and if I didn't get my act together on my own, well, I would have been a very sorrowful mess, which I, of course, obviously wanted to avoid. And once you start, you find it very engaging. It's very interesting. Of course, you are an interesting person, right? I mean, you are. And to what an extent have you just gone outside to see what people thought about you? Or have you looked at yourself and thought, would I like me? Would I enjoy being with me? And it's very, very good to enjoy being with you, because you will you meet your own conscience. Let's put it that way. You really do. When you're meeting your own conscience, if it's not pretty clear, can be a difficult companion. Let's put it that way. It can be a difficult companion, and you want to avoid that. If you can maintain your conscience clear and understand yourself and forgive yourself for the things that you did which you didn't know about, and have patience with the things that you did know about and made a mistake again, you can enormously enjoy your own company. And of course, like Sarah was saying, I was born in 41, so you can calculate, I'm 80 now, I'm going to be 80. And cultivating your inner world, in other words, knowing how to remain in solitude, is a very useful thing when you get older. Because, I couldn't do now what I did before. There's no way. It's not possible. And of course, you know, at my age, I don't go out a lot. I don't see a lot of people. And I must admit that this, you know, unwitting, should I say, approach and cultivation of my inner world right since childhood has really, really sustained me very well. And it's made being older much easier, I must say. And, you know, your inner world is a resource. When you create something in your inner world, in other words, thoughts, something beautiful, this is what you share with people when you go out. When you meet people, you're going to share that. And so then, of course, after all of these experiences that I had at school and as a child, I went into a massive amount of activity during my youth and my adult life. And then now have gone into meditation, and there are all kinds of things now that I'm discovering. It's so enriching, because what you can do with your mind, if you keep your mind properly accurate, if you keep your mind, you can actually move forward with your mind much quicker than you can with your physical realizations for doing things. You can be quicker with your mind, which means you can evolve quicker. And this, again, is a wonderful benefit, you know. So those are my experiences from solitude. But silence is not a loneliness. I mean, I saw this with a lot of the nuns. I mean, in Italy, there are many, many cloistered orders, monasteries, where they don't speak, actually. They speak once a week, on Sunday after lunch. And they enjoy being like that. They live in a solitary state.
Yeah, so amazing examples you've had through your life, and thanks for sharing them, because it's something actually that is really coming across. We can cultivate it, and also
Definitely.
when we are more clear about how we think, then we're less likely to get into vulnerability when we are thrown back onto our own mind and our own company.
Yes.
So it'd be very nice if you have any questions for Wendy to please pop them in the chat. So everyone found it very engaging. And then beautiful wisdom is one comment. And when we have the panel, we can put those questions to you. So that's lots for nourishing food for thought. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And my next guest, our next guest, is Dr. Prashant Khakiday, who's connecting today from Cambridge, originally from Goa in India, and background in surgery and integral health. And his main interest is in the relationship between psyche, emotions, behavior, and health, and has spoken in many countries, including the US medical teaching program. And we're going to hear today your thoughts on this subject. So warm welcome.
Thank you. And it's so nice to hear from Wendy, and listening to her story. Of course, she's an authority to speak on this subject. Didn't know about your childhood, experiences, but Wendy has arranged many silence retreats, and know her interest in this. I'm going to read one quote, Arthur Clarke. He says, two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in this universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. So this is a nice positioning, that we got two options in this world. And another person, let us see if you can guess who is saying this. Solitude is fine, but I need someone to tell that solitude is fine. This is likely to come from Woody Allen, but I don't think it is Woody Allen here. So the memories exist to be shared, and ideas exist to be heard. And this is like a position, we all know this, we don't want to just stay with your ideas yourself. So where does this concept of enjoying loneliness come in? One simple insight I want to like to bring here. With the body, we know if you are in the wrong posture, it gives pain. Pain is definitely a signal that posture is wrong. In the same way, in our mind, if there is any discomfort of any kind, it just means some posture is wrong. I need to just check my attitude towards it. Not everyone finds being alone lonely. There are very, maybe many find alone to be alone lonely, but there are many who like to be in solitude. They prefer the inner solitude. We heard examples from the nuns in Italy. They choose this life in the same way many others choose this life. Also in studies, it is seen that when people are in a lonely situation, they actually have benefits at the end of the lonely situation. Not everyone, but there are some who choose to be in a lonely situation and they take benefit because they think human beings are chronophagous. They eat their time and they got more space now to that will be filled by something higher. And why these nuns are choosing this? Because they want to achieve something higher. But in studies, it is seen that even if without their choice, they are in a lonely situation, there are people who at the end of the stay say that it was a good thing that happened to them. Now what we can do, I'm not saying that, this is it and, loneliness we have to put up with. Life is much more. Life is like a roller coaster ride. We go up and down and there is a round and spin up. It has got a map. And different situations come in this journey. And if I have the right attitude towards it, essentially, if I am seeing the big map, then I will enjoy this journey. This is a nice space at the moment. In the whole life, there was so many other things, noise. Now there is loneliness. Let me see with that attitude to start with. This is a new experience. What can I learn from here? But having said this, I would also like to draw attention to another thing which we can check in our changing the posture. If I want to change the inner posture. And this is nicely described by Jean-Paul Sartre. If you are lonely, when you are alone, you are in a bad company. So if you feel, you are lonely, there's something wrong there, in yourselves. And that has to be changed. If I don't enjoy my own company, that is what can happen. That's why people spend their time with television or mobile phone, because they want to be away from themselves. So if you are not enjoying your own company, how will others enjoy your company? What are you expecting? If you are enjoying your own company, then others will naturally enjoy your company. What often happens in these some cases of those who are lonely, they are desperate to have some company, some friends, and they are clingy or something in their behavior that precisely puts others off and they want to avoid them. So it becomes a vicious circle in this. We can change the game, understand ourselves, how we can enjoy our own company. What really happens when we are coming to the, our mind, if we have to find out what is going on there, as we create ego within us, and I'm defining ego as identifying ourselves with something that is temporary, something that is external. Like, for example, you define yourself based on the job, define yourselves based on the body. These are all temporary things. So these ego are innately empty. The insecurity presents as emptiness because what they are defining themselves, what they are identifying themselves is unpredictable. It is going to disappear. And there is a panic inside them. And when you are empty, there is a desperation. So everyone is in this mode at the present time. They define themselves, can be based on another person. There's the husband, famous husband, and I'm the wife, or some parents. It can be sometimes even a dog. They may define themselves based on these things. And as we create these identities, there is panic inside, and we then want to cling to more things. We want to, please praise me more, please give me company. We become beggars inside. And more there is success to the beggar becomes bigger. So each of these ego is a beggar, and some of them are successful beggars. This is inner psychodynamics going on. And you never win in this. I may get a company. There are methods where we can solve this loneliness. You can join in a voluntary organizations, and there are different things happening. So they say not necessarily you are interested in that mission, but you will at least get some company of some kind, and there will be no loneliness. Or keep a dog or cat, and there will be less loneliness. There are answers, but that doesn't really solve the real problem, because the inner beggar just becomes a successful beggar and gets bigger, and problem is postponed. The way to address this is define yourselves based on beyond. All these temporary things is when we define ourselves based on temporary things, it creates panic, it creates emptiness. When you see the guest visiting this world, the beautiful language we use here is invisible traveler visiting this world, and get a perspective from there. This is something definitely everyone need to experiment with. Get a perspective from beyond this. And as you are playing with this invisible traveler, just like a tourist, he has no intention to create attachments to anything, but he enjoys every minute in this new place. In the same way, this invisible traveler finds he's a guest here, he's a tourist here, and he has no intention to get stuck. He knows of the exit. Deeper inside, there is no panic, there is no emptiness. On the contrary, there is feeling of fullness. And when you are secure and full, and you find you are just enjoying every moment as it comes. There is fog and rain, and one quantum physicist, Fred Alan Wolf, based in San Francisco, he says a big miracle is right in front of your nose. What is in front of you? It is an absolute miracle. There are many others, including Einstein. He has said, you can either see this as a miracle, this world is a miracle, or it is not a miracle. But implied is there is a big miracle there, including this body. But when we are in that beggar mode, we are not free to appreciate anything. We are in self-pity ourselves. Please give me company. Please, praise me. The beggar is that beggar. You come out of this, and you are seeing the wonder of this moment. You are seeing the wonder of the next moment. And as you are doing this, you are finding that you are enjoying your own company. This you, the real you, is a happy guest. Guests are always, people like the company of guests because they are light and they are fresh. They have got bigger understanding. They have just been outside. So here you play with this guest perspective. And you are now discovering that side of you where you enjoy to be with 100 people. That is one experience. You enjoy to be on your own. That is another experience. You are enjoying your own company all the time. This is not something that will come in 1 second or after one talk, but we may have to play with this. Some self-schooling is necessary, but the glimpses will start coming. We all know this to some extent, but we may have to culture it further. I'll stop here before Sarah tells me I'm speaking too much.
No, it's very also essence-full, and it linked back for me to what Jim was saying about seeing this as a sort of a drama. It's like a roller coaster drama. It's giving us a sort of a perspective on it. I guess we can move to the panel, and I think others may be having questions, probably around how, and also maybe some questions for understanding. So I'm going to invite back Jim and Wendy, if you want to come into camera and be ready to maybe with the mic open, and we can get the questions ready for you. So one thing I might like to ask Jim, if you're there, is we're used to this term social distancing, but would it be better to call it spatial distancing? Would that help us feel less socially isolated?
I don't know what the context is really in that, but I think what I've been experiencing is so much fear with this aspect of social distancing, that it seems to be so intrinsically emerged now in people, this fear. And sometimes it's just not a fear that's to do with the virus, but it's actually emerged all the latent fears that are within people at this particular moment. And people seem to be bringing to the fore everything that's been suppressed within themselves. And I feel that this thing about social distancing, we've created barriers between ourselves, and we've created this kind of separation. We've been separated for a long time, I think, but more so. And I feel through spirituality, through this compassionate understanding of the scenario that we're all going through, the pain and the torture and the angst that people are experiencing, I think this having this awareness, having this vision when we connect with people or when we pass them, it would break down this barrier, will interface with their energy field and connect with their heart. For me, it's just about everyone's heart at this particular moment has been hurt. It's been hurt for a long time, and the love that people have naturally within them has been kind of pushed to the back, and all that's evident and all they're going through is this kind of this emergent fear. What will happen and how will it happen? And I think my response, in a way, and be interesting to hear what other people, the other speakers will say, is that just having that kind of positive vision and having that positive vibrational connection with others, I think helps to break down and bring people into the light, into that sense of it's okay.
Yes, thank you. It's interesting, the aspect of fear, and would be nice to hear from Wendy. What do you? One question in the chat of what is the nature of the feeling of being okay with being alone and not feeling lonely, and how does that help us? As you were saying, we have an inner resource, like an inner library, and that kind of strength might help combat some of this atmosphere of fear that Jim is highlighting. So we need, I guess, to work on that. And what is it that you would suggest to help us deepen these feelings which counterbalance or replace the feeling of fear? I hope that's a clear question.
Well, it depends what kind of fear you're thinking about. You know, people have all kinds of fear of obviously of COVID. You know, they will have fear of that, a fear of sickness, but also the frustration. I mean, I don't know what it's like in England, but definitely in Rome, what they're missing enormously is actually the contact with their loved ones, and there is, you know, if you don't manage to live without that kind of thing, at least now and again, it is very difficult to overcome this, you know. And I mean, I can see an enormous amount of pain that has been experienced where people are left alone. I mean, left alone at home where you've got your resources and you've got books to read and you've got your music to listen to or whatever is one thing. But being left alone to die in a hospital without anybody to hold your hand except a nurse who's got a rubber glove on is probably something that is enough to, you know, really put you into a state of fear. And I can see the pain that people are going through when they know that this is what's happening to their loved ones or other people's loved ones, you know. And this is what is the basic fear. Now, I mean, I'm not so sure that if you haven't already started working on your inner world and come to a very good sort of acceptance of what life might bring, you know, and it comes and it goes, you know, it comes onto the screen and it disappears from the screen. If you haven't come to that sort of a positioning in your life, you probably will get hung up in your difficulties, in your fear. This is true. If this is why, you know, there's no time like now to develop your inner space. And that inner space, it's up to you as to what you put in there. Nobody can tell you what to do. You will meet yourself, that is sure, but you can live experiences that you had from the past, and they are the very rich part of your library. But one of the experiences that I had as a child at school, when we went to Mass every day, you know, recited Mass in Latin. It was in Latin in those days. Well, that's no problem. But, you know, because of this friendship that I'd had with this little invented, you know, imaginary friend that I had, I'd say to God, you know, aren't you dead bored up there? You know, isn't there something more interesting that we can talk about? And then I thought, well, you know, if the nuns knew what you were thinking, you'd be considered absolute heretic. And so I didn't know where to leave that. But when I started meditating and they explained to me, you know, the concept of God and all this kind of thing, yeah, you know, and I started meditating and I had this experience and all I could think of was, oh my, it's you again, you know. And the answer came back, well, who do you think it was? Like, there is this possibility, silence and solitude, if you're that inclined, and if you want that, is a door open to a relationship with the divine. That is something that I did experience very clearly. I didn't know what it was as a child, of course. So there are all kinds of things. I mean, there's a kid in England who took up piano. He never played piano. He went on Google and got himself a piano tutor, and he plays very decent piano now. And I think that's fabulous.
I like this. You brought a couple of times this innocence of children. One is to make up imaginary friend,
Yeah.
which is very common. And
Yeah,
also
right.
this kind of relationship or kind of a conversation with something bigger. There's a nice story of a child drawing a picture, and the teacher comes over and says, "What are you drawing?" And she says, "I'm drawing God." And then the teacher says, "No one knows what he looks like." Child says, "Well, you will in a minute."
I love it.
So I'm going to ask Prashant. You were talking about ego, and would you say, because it's quite curious that we can be with people even before lockdown, we may have experienced it. You can be with even contacts, friends, or family, but we might actually be feeling alone even with a crowd. So is ego the explanation for why we can still feel isolated even though we have close proximity to others? You just need to come into the world of sound.
Yes, yeah, definitely. There is nothing else other than the ego who remains the beggar. So it sort of makes job easy. Just we don't even need to worry too much which ego it is. We just need to nourish the higher consciousness. We said higher consciousness is the perspective of from beyond. And life continues, but you are just seeing from another angle. But you are right. Once the ego gets bigger, his needs are bigger. It is like a beggar, he has got bigger needs. He needs a certain specific person. If that person is not there, he will feel lonely in the midst of 100 people because he is missing some relation who died or something like that.
Yes, that's helpful. I don't know if Wendy or Jim have anything to add to that.
I was interested in, just looking at the causative factors of fear, which Wendy mentioned a little bit, that I always think that the situation at the present moment is what it's doing is activating all our latent fears, and things are coming to the surface. And it's quite interesting that many kind of studies are saying that most fears are imaginary. And like the acronym for fear is FEAR, fantasized experiences appearing real. Most of them don't exist, but they're imaginary. And I think this is what's happening, that with all the stuff that's kind of happening around us, that people now are imagining the worst scenario, the worst situations. And I feel what's happening is that this aspect of, I noticed one of the questions said that, that you can be with others, but feeling alone. And I think that sometimes these aspects are now filling people's consciousness. They're a constancy in people's mind. They can't move away from them. And it's like the end period where they're having to face these issues. They're having to deal with them, whether they're real or not. And there's this kind of this trauma that's going on with people. And I feel that the only way that Prashant has been talking about, the only way we can move away and deal with it is through silence. That when we go into our inner world, we go into this silent world, we give ourselves the opportunity to see things more clearly. We begin to see things, maybe ever so slowly, but we begin to see differences. We begin to connect with our inner truth, our spiritual heart, which will be the touchstone for us to see whether the things are real or not. And it's kind of experimenting with this, like Prashant, I agree with Prashant is saying that it takes time. This is a process of unrealization. and it's a process that doesn't happen immediately. But I feel now the only journey that people can make, and to gain any kind of resolution or any kind of help and hope, is into our inner world, where into their inner world, connecting with their own reality.
Yes, it's interesting to explore this aspect. I have a question for you, Jim, from earlier, actually, because you were talking about finding and discovering oneself as the person you've been looking for. And the comment was, it's a very wonderful concept. But when someone is experiencing, say, acute loneliness, would they need any help in this task? Do you have any comments on that?
I think you just need a divine experience. But I think you really do. I think it's very easy for us to philosophize and give lots of strategies and lots of different ways. But especially if you're trapped in the darkness of your own personal kind of gloom, I think in a way that there has to be the volition or the will to change. And I think for me, what helps me a lot is nature. I think that suggestions could be had that people can go into nature. And what happens is that the natural worlds have their own positive energies and their own positive qualities. And I think what happens is nature has often been used throughout time as a trigger, as a mirror, to enable individuals to move into a more positive space. And I think this is very helpful kind of resource for people to sort of, I know it's difficult with lockdown, but I think you've got your garden, there is spaces where people can go and find inspiration, to find support. And I think also Prashant gave some great quotes there. Reading the positive quotes and inspirations of others, the readings and writings of others, gives us a different insight, takes us into another space by which we can then begin to kind of like sort things out in a kind of uncomplicated way.
Yes, thank you.
I might just like to add just a bit here.
Yeah.
Definitely, people should take expert advice if it goes too far, because that extreme loneliness, and if you are caught in it and you can't pull yourselves out, it affects the body at many levels, and all health problems and death rate, is higher if there is that, trapped loneliness. And also it is a vicious circle. When a person is lonely, others don't like to be with them, as we saw earlier. They like to be away from them. These are the people who need company. But everyone is selfish. They are all looking for a good company. And someone is, a little bit unhappy and miserable, they would like to be away. And so it becomes a vicious circle. So it is good to get expert advice and break out of that circle.
Yes, thank you. Good to get the balance. And I wonder if Wendy has anything to add at this stage.
I think the contact with nature, and again in lockdown, it's not always that easy, but our culture somehow has lost the natural contact that human beings are meant to have with nature. And the Red Indians, for example, will tell you to go out and hug a tree. I tried it, of course, and I find that the tree, the energy, the vibration that nature has, be it a tree, for example, or just everything that there is in nature, is an enormous sustenance to the human being, because it is such a stable energy. It's very peaceful. It is extremely stable. And if you yourself are not as stable as all of that, it will calm you down. I mean, this tree hugging bit is not just a funny game. It works, actually. Surround yourself with plants if you enjoy them, and you will find that they have a very peaceful vibration. I mean, we just have lost the capacity to pick up on everything that we have around us vibrates. And something that's alive, like a plant, will vibrate in a very positive way. We tend to experience a lot of negativity, and this can help us get rid of this negativity. I don't think we use nature enough. I mean, for example, we used to go to the park. We've got a very beautiful park not far from the house. And being aware that a lot of people go to the park on Sundays to receive from nature, we thought, we'll go as a meditation exercise, and we'll go and walk in the park, and we'll give back to nature something good, something positive, something appreciative, something light, something loving. And we walked for a little while in this little alley of trees, and I had this very weird experience that the trees were sitting there sort of waiting, and they had good energy to give. But as I was giving them good energy back, they picked it up, and I had this feeling that the leaves were sort of going around me. It was extraordinary. We don't use nature enough. It's there for us.
Leave us alone.
Yeah. Yes, poor old nature.
Yeah, but it's interesting, that I think picking up you're saying and what Prashant was saying about nature, I think people need guidance, though, that often you can go into nature and you could feel more alone. You can feel the isolation of nature and how it is, how each thing seems individual by itself, because that's where people's consciousness has been. As you are, so will you be your world. But I think if we can help people to understand, see how nature works, how it gives. Nature is constantly benevolent. A tree says, come and sit on my branches, take my fruit, take my energy, take whatever you like. I don't mind. I'm just here for you. And so in the same way, I think if we give people some guidance on how to use the phenomena of the natural worlds, this then becomes a teaching tool. This becomes a mirror, a trigger for them to have some realization about their own life, that in fact, by giving, you are receiving. Of course, we understand that. But it's such a deep concept that nature is loved because it gives. Nature is respected because it's supported us through time and still does.
That's an interesting link there to what Prashant was saying, the perspective of being this sort of guest here, because it's not a taking attitude as such. It's more like you're appreciating, and also in contrast, the ego, as was defined, is subservient or begging and taking. But I'd like to ask maybe each one of you the question which has come. You may have all had some good training in learning how to manage mental health, emotions. But the question from the Spanish group, she's saying she's not learned how to do that, and how to discover and experience this, and how do we train for that? I don't know if maybe Prashant would like to start, and then it'd be nice to hear from.
And I just wanted to check again, what was the exact, what she want to learn?
How to manage emotions and how to manage these feelings, because maybe over a period of time you may have accumulated that calm response and also enjoying one's own company. But what is the actual process and practice of learning this?
Sure. The best way to manage the emotions, create new emotions, learn to see in a new way. And we were playing with this concept. If this is this moment, you are visiting this planet and seeing this moment as a gift for you, and someone is performing a drama for you. Just play with this, a thought experiment. Someone is performing a drama, and just see what is offered to you here. There may be cloud, and there are trees, and there is stone, and all of this is a paraphernalia for your entertainment. And you are watching people walking, someone is jumping. All this is drama going on at this moment. This is the plot. Sit with those eyes for 2 minutes and you shift your emotions instantly. You are seeing the wonder of it, the scale of it. And if you are doing it for 2 minutes, no one can prove to you that it is not a drama. Just we got some way of looking at this world, and that is fine. We might think this is our planet and Earth, that is fine. For 2 minutes, you play with this attitude, and you find you shift your feelings, emotions. And once the direction changes, it has possibility. You are in a different spiral. You go up the spiral. One leads to the next. You see things differently next minute. So best way to manage unpleasant emotions, don't go into analyzing it, work on another level.
That's very good to clarify that, because we're all very used to this analyzing method. And by just shifting perspective, if we change our feeling, it sends a very empowering message to the self. So thanks for that. Would maybe Wendy, would you like to add anything?
Of course, I'd have a more sort of direct approach. You know, emotions need to be expressed. If you think of a child, you know, you tell them something that they enjoy and they'll bounce up and down, you know, naturally. Like a dog will, it'll wag its tail, you know, this is very natural. I think it's very useful to use the physical movement of the body to get rid of emotion that you don't know how to express because there's nobody there you can express it to. I use this very much as a dancer, and I can remember that one of my childhood friends died really unexpectedly, and we were very close. And I went to the dancing school that night and went to class, and halfway through the bar I started crying, and the teacher said to me, "Don't stop, keep going, keep dancing." And by the time I got out of the class, it had gone. I mean, the physical expression will really, really help you. I mean, if you can, we are allowed in our lockdown here, we're allowed actually to go out for a run. Go to the park, run if you can do that, or just run as much as wherever you are. I mean, I found that dancing for me, because I didn't run in parks, but I used to dance. It was really, really good to, you know, emotions get bottled up. Bottled up is not very nice. You know, it gets all sort of confused. Express it in some way. Skip. Get a skipping rope, you know, and skip. You can do any kind of that kind of thing that you can do at home too is excellent. I believe very much in in using the physical body, because that's my experience.
Yes, exactly. I was just thinking your background and this very beautiful image, keep dancing. I think we can apply that in many ways in life. It's like even as a musician, you might skip a note, but you just keep going and
just keep going. Mm.
Yeah, thank you for this. And what about you, Jim? Any thoughts? Would you? Jim also keeps dancing, I think.
Very flat feet. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, isn't it? Not an easy one to address superficially, I think. I mean, I agree with all the answers, and I think everyone's perspective is correct. Maybe another perspective is maybe to see that our emotional nature possibly is created through disappointments, through people expectations not being met, and so we create emotional reactive behavior and so on. And maybe we kind of, so we distance ourselves and we isolate ourselves and so on. And again, it goes back to a lot of it is about assumptions, imagination. Often we don't communicate, we don't reconcile it, we don't kind of clarify it for one reason or another. And sometimes we can't, or we won't, or we haven't got the capacity to make that step to try and deal with it because we haven't got the confidence, or so on. And then maybe we have to kind of have a kind of a philosophical kind of reaction, maybe to say, well, that individual, the reason why their behavior was like that, because they were under an influence. Something influenced them, took them into a space where there was this particular behavior, which I assess as being wrong or negative, maybe it is or not, but it doesn't matter. That the influence caused them to be like that. And so I don't blame them. In the same way, you know, that you could maybe, like a child, if we see children and we see children behaving in certain different ways, but you understand, I mean, of course, people do get angry with children, do hit them and so on. But I think we can understand this, the example that you understand a child won't understand things immediately. A child won't be able to formulate and react and do the things we expect them to do because they're still formulating their personality. And so we understand it. And so we don't have an emotional a kind of war with them. We say, oh, this is a child, they're okay, they're learning. And so we move away from that kind of stance of classification that we say that person's like this, they're like that, they should have done this, and so on. And we develop negative emotional behaviors. And I think personally for myself that the best way I found for myself to deal with emotionality is through silence. That going into silence, going into my own personal inner world, it's like the waves of negative emotions subside. And that very powerful energy, which is within ourselves, kind of suffuses the effect. And we reach a kind of level where there's tranquility, a tranquility of feeling, a tranquility and softness of our own kind of inner world. And we come out of it with a different perspective. I'm not saying the thing it's changed, but kind of it alleviates it. It helps us to deal with it. And I think the more we connect with our inner world of silence, the more we can kind of deal with the things outside. I think this is such a complex vortex of emotional kind of chaos that's outside ourselves. And I agree with the guys before that you can't intellectualize it, you can't deal with it. The only thing that we can change is our own personal response, change our thinking. I can't fix the world, but I can fix my feelings, I can fix my way of dealing with it. And I think that through that we start to work with positive energies, we can start to work with pure vibrational feelings, which I think this then will work. This is like working with our mind, taking our mind, just not in a sort of self-centered position, but we're now sharing our energies, sending pure thoughts to the troubled, torn hearts of our brothers and sisters.
Thank you. It's definitely something like a laboratory as an invitation to experiment with for everyone. And when you were speaking, it made me think it's actually that negative self-talk that isolates us, the kind of the paranoia and that sort of chatter, which actually is maybe not even true, but it's like a running. So your process of seeing it, and I personally use writing a lot. That helps me to sort of see it, and then I can more clearly get a perspective on that. So thank you. And I have like one more question, because amazing time has gone, and this question, it'd be nice to hear from all of you. But actually before that, one quick clarifying one from Prashant, because you were talking about ego. You talked about ego as something outside of us, but are we not all multi-dimensional, with nothing existing outside of us? We want to escape from not so nice things, but is that not what life is about, to discover and experience? Does the question, do you get the question?
Yes.
Just to clarify.
One is we are experiencing many things around us, but to define myself based on things outside of me is a huge absurdity, because we are literally using the letter I to something that is not I. For example, a person defines himself, is important because car is big. It is something like that. He defines himself based on another person. That is very abnormal. And that is why we have to address it. It is a wrong posture. Inner posture is wrong. We of course interact with everything, but as a guest, they interact with everything with that freedom, and then you are in a healthy position. Be the vulnerable guest.
Yes, thank you. It's a big subject, and of course, it's like ego is used in different philosophies. So, whoever wrote the question, do let us know if that helps.
And a guest and a trustee. There are many things. You are responsible for it, like a car. It is your car, and okay, you are a trustee. But step back. Be clever at not getting drawn into it. That every scratch, the car scratches you also somewhere.
Yes. In this case, it would be bicycle in Cambridge. So maybe one final question here would be nice to hear from all of you. Given the extent of the problem in today's world, what do you think the mechanism for practical help would be? What would it look like? So welcome to any of our panelists to share on that if the question is clear. So given the extent of the situation we have right now, what would the mechanism be for practical help that would be useful? What would it look like? Don't know.
Okay, I say something.
Yes.
I feel now that the state of things is so deteriorated that I feel now that all we can do as meditators, as spiritual light workers, is to work with subtle energies and to work from that unlimited level of consciousness and to spread that vibration on the subtle level to touch souls' hearts which are enshrouded in darkness, in pain, in hopelessness, in so much fear. And I feel the only thing that will reach them, words won't reach them, news won't reach, nothing will help them except pure vibration, I feel at the moment. And I feel now that as a collective group, we should be now working and sending our vibrational pure thoughts out into the world to touch souls, to help souls, to give them hope, to give them light, to give them direction, to give them a way forward in their life.
That's it's actually very profound, and they do say much communication is non-verbal. And so just that body language of that very clear vision of connectedness, that we don't need to even be physically present with someone, but that experience, which I guess is born of your practice of silence, that we can be giving that feeling of love and belonging, and be nice to experiment with that. And for everyone here who's taken this time, obviously you're that is an empowering thing for all of us, and we can keep that in mind and carry it forward.
There's something I'd like to say, if I may, is that you make of life what you want to, it's up to you. And I'll admit, we all do have moments of great difficulty. And we need to find a way, each one of us, because I've found my way of bringing back what I would call a positive mental attitude towards the self, towards everybody else, because I can't give out those lovely sustaining vibrations. I think it's very inspiring to feel that you can actually do something. And people would like to do physically. But there are times, especially now, where there is not an enormous amount that you can actually do for others. It's more on a vibrational level, and to understand that that is a doing, actually. It is as important as a physical gesture. Sustaining an atmosphere, like Jim was saying, is as important as doing something physically. And you can be motivated by the feeling of altruism, maybe, that you might feel, that you might have, the desire to help humanity, a humanitarian feeling, because we're all in this boat together, you know. But we need to, each one of us needs to create that positive mental attitude. And I found that if I connect with things that I like, things that I appreciate, beauty, as I said, looking at what I've got and feeling that, you know, be happy with your lot, even if it's not a lot, which is a saying, you know, thinking of these sort of things will help you climb back up to that positive mental attitude where you can actually give out good vibrations to yourself and to others, you know. So it works for you, but it also works outside, because you can't hold the vibration in it, it goes out. You see.
Thank you. Yes, it's inspiring. And if one person can do it, then it's like, if not you, who? If not now, when? So, Prashant, what are your thoughts on this?
Sure. You know, one book by Peter Russell. Peter Russell was a physicist in Cambridge and in London subsequently. His book on planet Earth, and the first page, first chapter is a story. And in this story, in essence, a boat is sinking and passengers are having party, oblivious of what is happening to the boat. And some are busy getting cakes, some are busy giving cakes, but they are all in the party. And yeah, no, everyone is oblivious what is happening. You now understand what is happening. And if you understand, the answer is not trying to give them some false hopes. That is not an idea. The wisest thing we can do is find a way out of this sinking boat and make it easy for others to come out of the sinking boat. There are still cakes going on, and there are still, you know, sort of music going on, but you are finding the way out. What is happening now here, see it as a little signal. This is not the end. You know, the medical world is also saying this is not the only pandemic. There can be another virus can come immediately after this. There are many reasons why we can see this as a signal of a much bigger situation to come. It is a false position for us to take such a support of this temporary sinking boat. You know, so the wisest thing, and for which no one will regret, if you take steps to come out of the boat and offer the help, be expert in this way out. On the land, there may be more cakes there. The cakes on the boat are not the only option.
Yes, and that's been a theme in your sharing about the signal. And that, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear from you in the chat. We're just over time, so we will be wrapping up shortly, but we will keep the call open with a song to share together. But many people have talked about silver lining of lockdown, and not that we want to say that it's been at all a walk in the park, but this chance to just stop and come back from this machinery, as Jim was saying, of consuming and being so busy, and to really see that maybe nature is giving a signal, and that is even echoed in the WHO. And so we do have this as an opportunity as well. But I hope today you've had some support with tools and like-minded company for this opportunity to really find that inner library of richness, and this opportunity to see this with the attitude of a play. And if our panelists are burning with a final comment, then do feel free. And after that, we're going to share a song and close with some connections for follow-up courses and talks which you may enjoy from Brahma Kumaris. So just giving a chance for any final parting words. Just Jim, you need to...
You know that alone means all one. All one, yeah? So maybe that's the key.
Very beautiful. Yes, playing with words, and that's actually very essenceful as well. So we're going to have a song called The Key. Now we have the key. And I want to extend great thanks to Jim, Wendy and Prashant, and also Enrique on translation, and on all of you for creating this time and also enjoy sharing. The recording will be made available on cambridgeinnerspace.org and on Facebook.
Thank you for being so wonderful.
Really, thank
together.
you. It's true. Yeah. Wonderful. Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks to everyone, and meet again.
Do you have the feeling you've been here before? Looking back on all the steps you've taken to this door. Have you tasted such a love on the rocky road to search? Now the fruit is ripe to pick, it takes away the hurt. Do you have the feeling that you now have the key? Would it open up to your eternity? Have you met such a friend who never sees your wrongs? Smiles and blesses endlessly as he sings you all your songs. Have you heard such a tale that fills your mind with gems? A wealth so limitless, it never seems to end.